And if that dark thought that arose from nowhere, that destructive impulse you cannot explain, is not really yours? Spiritism, based on the works of Allan Kardec, teaches us that we are the owners of our choices, that free will is sacred. But it also reveals that we live surrounded by an invisible reality, inhabited by consciences that, like us, still carry their passions and desires. What happens then when one of those wills tries to prevail over her own? When a subtle external influence tries little by little to turn the steering wheel of your destiny? The answer is more complex and frightening than you imagine, and it begins with a simple whisper in your mind.
Now, let's unravel the mechanism. If free will is an unshakable law, how would such interference even be possible? The truth is that it doesn't come as a film possession, with the person losing control of the body. It is something much more silent, much more intimate, and therefore infinitely more dangerous. The key to understanding everything is in one word: harmony.
Think of your mind as a vast energetic field, emitting waves all the time. These waves are your thoughts, your deepest feelings, your passions, and your sorrows. According to the Spiritist doctrine, we live immersed in an ocean of other minds, other consciences that have already left the physical body. And the law that governs this contact is simple, but implacable. Like attracts like. A spirit that still vibrates with hatred, revolt, the desire for revenge, or obsession with an addiction, cannot simply come and dominate someone who is at peace. It is physically impossible. It would be like trying to tune a radio to a frequency that does not exist. The problem begins when we lower our frequency, when we feed an old grudge, when we surrender to uncontrolled rage, when we become obsessed with a fixed idea of jealousy or greed. At that moment, we ourselves open a door, not a physical door, but a vibrating door. And on the other side, someone listens, someone who vibrates on the same dissonant note, and it is there that subtle influence begins. It does not impose itself, it whispers. The obsessive spirit, as it is called in the work of Allan Kardec, especially in the Book of Mediums, acts as a perverse amplifier of thoughts that are already within you. That small jealousy that you considered normal suddenly transforms into an absolute certainty of betrayal. The doubt about a decision turns into a distressing paralysis. The desire to drink or to use a drug becomes an uncontrollable impulse, which seems to come from your own entrails.
The masterstroke of this interference is that it disguises itself as one's own thought. You think that recurring and negative idea is a result of your reasoning, your analysis. You debate with it within your head, but you don't realize that you are, in fact, debating with an external presence that feeds on your confusion. It's a game of mirrors, where your own distorted image is used against you. The instructing spirits, in the psychographies written by Chico Xavier, such as in Missionarios de la Luz, make it clear: obsession is always a two-way street. It's a proposal that finds acceptance, an invitation to a banquet of bad feelings, and we are those who decide whether we are going to sit at the table.
But this leads us to an abyss of even deeper questions. If influence depends on our harmony, why do some people, even amidst great torments, seem to be unshakable, and others, seemingly strong, collapse with a terrifying ease? What determines the strength of our spiritual lock? The answer is not in the power of the spirit that tries to influence, but in something much older and more personal: the history of one's own soul.
So, if the door is opened by us, what makes some people true fortresses, impenetrable, and others easy targets for those influences? The answer plunges into the shadows of our own past, not just of this life, but of the long journey of our soul. The Spiritist doctrine speaks of the law of cause and effect, and it is here that it becomes viscerally personal. Our current weaknesses are not accidents. Many are old wounds that have not healed, doors that we have left ajar for a very, very long time.
Imagine that each action, each choice, each intense feeling that we cultivate leaves a mark on our perispirit. which is the spiritual body. They are like grooves, energetic habits. A vice, for example, is not just a physical or psychological problem. It creates a deep groove, a vibrational pattern that screams into the spiritual universe. When we die and take that groove with us, it becomes an attraction point. In the next incarnation, even if we don't consciously remember it, we bring this tendency, this latent fragility. It is like a scar that itches when the time to heal closes. An obsessive spirit who shares the same vibration of that old vice finds in that scar an access point. It does not create the problem from nothing. It explores a gap that already existed.
But they are not just the addictions. Deep and unresolved resentments, cultivated hatreds, the vengeful desires that we nourish in the past, all of this are doors with rusted locks. The work The Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec shows how suffering spirits are often trapped precisely in the feelings that they were unable to overcome. When we reincarnate, we bring the mission of healing these wounds. If, instead of healing, we reactivate the resentment, it is as if we were lighting a beacon in the dark, calling out to all those who are still sailing in the same sea of bitterness.
And there is a crucial factor that we often ignore: the will. Chronic indecision, the lack of courage to take control of one's own life, is an open invitation. A spirit that wants to interfere finds in the indecisive person fertile ground, because he himself does not know what he wants. He then offers a direction, even if it is the worst possible. It is for this reason that self-knowledge is the most powerful of traps against spiritual interference. Knowing your fears, your weaknesses, your points of pain is like mapping the secret doors of your own fortress in order to lock them.
However, this puts us before the last and darkest piece of this puzzle. Suppose that a spirit is able indeed to cross this line, that he overcomes all the barriers and implants his will upon that of another. What does he gain with this? Power? Control? The truth is that he triggers a chain reaction whose consequences are as terrible for him as they are for his victim, because in the invisible universe, every action finds its reaction, and no law is violated without a price to be paid.
And so we arrive at the inevitable conclusion. The spirit that manages to, even partially, impose its will upon another's free will does not celebrate a victory. It commits one of the greatest imbalances possible, and the law of cause and effect, which is just and educational, does not delay in acting. The first price it pays is the cruelest of prisons. It binds itself to the soul that it sought to dominate.
Allan Kardec, in the Book of Spirits, is clear in stating that the medium remains connected to his victim through bonds that he himself forged, often being dragged to where she is, feeling the anguish that he helped create. It is a mutual slavery. But the final consequence is even deeper. In attempting to hinder the growth of another, he paralyzes himself. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, will place this spirit in future existences in situations where he will experience on his own skin the agony of having his choices violated, his will stifled. He will learn through the pain of his own loss the sacred value of freedom that he tried to steal.
Therefore, spiritual interference in free will is a storm that destroys the port of both. For us, the lesson is clear. Our fortress is in the elevation of our thoughts, in the cultivation of a firm will and of the love that seals the cracks of the soul. And for any consciousness that tries to divert our path, there remains the harsh sentence of the divine law itself. Sooner or later, everyone will have to learn that the only true evolution is that which respects, invariably, the freedom of the next. Free will is not a concession. It is the law of life, and no one in any plan is immune to trying to break it.